can't get you out of my mind. It's like I feel it for the first time. Been thinking about you all night. I've been searching for this all my life. You're just my type.
Hey guys, it's Cameron. Welcome back to Life of a Dev. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to scrape a website using Puppeteer. We're going to be building a NodeJS application that scrapes the Facebook marketplace for items that we're looking for and just collects those results. In a later video, I'll be showing you guys how to store those results in a database. And then in a third video, I will be showing, to complete the application, I'll be showing you how we can use a package called NodeMailer to send us text message notifications when new items matching our criteria hit the marketplace. You may want to do this if you are trying to resell something and you want to be the first person notified when a new item matching your criteria hits the marketplace. So I've just created a folder called Facebook Marketplace Scraper, and we'll start off in here. In this video, I'm just going to be showing you how to use Puppeteer to scrape a website. You can use this to scrape any website, but like I said, we're going to be scraping the Facebook Marketplace today. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just initiate an npm module, or we're just going to run npm initiate or int, which will basically create a package.json file, and which will contain the name of the project, so on and so forth. So we'll just call it Facebook Marketplace Scraper, version 1 works. We'll leave the description empty. The entry point is going to be index.js. There's not going to be any test commands, no GitHub repository, no keywords, and then I will just put my name here. And you can put your name there, and then we'll just use the standard license. So once that's done, we have just a simple package.json file, which is a great start. Now we're going to need a few dependencies. We're obviously going to need Puppeteer. We're also going to need NodeMon. NodeMon just allows us to basically just monitors a folder, and whenever a file changes, it reinitiates our Node application. So let's go ahead and install Puppeteer first. So we'll do npm I Puppeteer. Oh, if I can spell it right. So we'll install Puppeteer, and then after this installs, we'll go ahead and install NodeMon, and we'll save it as a dev dependency because we won't need it in the production version. It's just for development. So, and this Puppeteer is a node-controlled version of Chromium. So the nice thing about Puppeteer is it will run JavaScript, so it allows us to scrape websites such as Reddit, Facebook, basically any website that needs JavaScript to load specific content. If you were just trying to download the HTML of the Facebook Marketplace, it wouldn't work because Facebook's built on React, and React starts off as an empty HTML file until the JavaScript bundle is sent down with it. So that's why we're using Puppeteer today. So Puppeteer is installed, and we will also install NodeMon and save it as a dev dependency. Sorry about my voice, guys. I'm getting over a cold, but I did want to make a video today, so that's why I sound a little raspy. So yeah, we just ran npm I, NodeMon, and capital D, which saves as dev dependency. And as you can see in our package.json file, we have Puppeteer, and we have NodeMon in our dev dependencies. So what we'll do is we'll just create a new folder or new file in this folder, and we'll just call it index.js. This will be our JavaScript file. And the first thing we're going to need to do is we will need to require Puppeteer. So we'll go const Puppeteer equals require Puppeteer. Oh, I need semicolons. or not semicolons, quotations. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is create an asynchronous function. So Puppeteer requires an asynchronous function. Basically everything within Puppeteer is asynchronous. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just do a functional, I believe it's a functional expression, where we'll go const, and this function is strictly going to get the list or an array of items and return that item array. So we'll just call it get items equals asynchronous, so an asynchronous arrow function, and we'll start there. So inside this asynchronous function, what we're going to want to do is we need to declare the browser, or actually launch the browser. So we'll have a declaration of browser, and that will be equal to Puppeteer dot launch, which is a method within the Puppeteer library, and we're going to pass it an object. And within this object, we're going to have a parameter of headless, and we're going to equal this to, or this is going to be set to true, or false, sorry. By default, it's set to true. So what this will do is when we launch the browser, the actual instance of Chromium will be displayed, and we'll use that during development. In the final production, we won't have this headless. We will basically just erase this object and set it as default. The next thing we need is we need to declare the page. So we actually need these to be, we need to wait for these items to be, to actually use them. So we'll have const page is equal to await browser dot new page, which is another method, or is a method on this browser instance. And we can go ahead and save that. And let's just go ahead and run our application right now. So if we do node mon period, which will basically monitor everything, clean exit. Oh, we didn't get anything because we're not actually running this function. So let's go ahead and just actually run this function here and see what comes up. So as you see, an instance of Chromium is loaded, and we're given a new tab. The viewport here is very small, so what we're going to do is we're going to pass another parameter in this launch method, and it's going to be called default viewport, and we're going to just pass it a value of null, and that should make our viewport the size of the page. As you see, the viewport is now the entire size of the page. So it's loading blank tabs because we're not actually telling it where to navigate to. So that will be the next step. So what we'll do is we'll go wait page dot go to, and we will go to facebook.com/marketplace. So https facebook.com/marketplace, and we can hit save, and that will reopen our instance, and we should be brought to the Facebook Marketplace. Awesome. So now we are in the Facebook Marketplace here, and we just have a bunch of items that are within my my area. So the first thing we're going to want to do is let's see what happens if we search for something. So in this instance, we're just going to be searching for iPhones, and we're going to search for anything 8 or up. Like I said, I might be doing this for resale, so I'd want to find an iPhone either undervalued that I could flip or grab parts from if I needed to repair another iPhone. So like this one, it's unlocked, but it's broken. Like that would be a good example of an iPhone. So when we search iPhones, you see the URL up here changes, It changes to, this is the area. So if you were to like be in California or Florida or something like that, or Canada or wherever, this would be different. This is just, I believe, for Colorado. What we're going to need is we're going to look at this URL and grab the search query equals, and as you see we have iPhone 8. So let's go ahead and adapt our URL to that. So we'll go /search /query. Oh, it's not forward, it's a parameter. So query equals, and we want this to be adaptive. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass a parameter into this function, and so up here we'll do, I guess we'll just call it item or search term, I guess is a better name. So we pass a parameter of search term in here, and in here when we actually call the function, our argument is just going to be iPhone 8. And then to use that, we actually need to turn this into a template literal, and that way we can use this to run JavaScript within our template literal. And we're going to use a function called Encode Url or URI, and that will just basically take anything that we put here and encode it so that it's the correct format for this URL. And we're going to encode the search term parameter that we passed into this function. So if we save, we should get the same instance, and as you see, it just ran the same thing. If we were to do something like BMX bike and hit save, we should get the Facebook Marketplace and anything that matches that search term. So as you see, we have BMX bike up here, and our results are BMX bikes. So let's change that back to iPhone 8. And now what we're going to do is, so now that we have the page loaded, we're going to use the developer tools in Chrome to figure out how we're going to get this information. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the first element here, or the first, whatever you want on the page. In this case, we're going to want each individual search item. So we'll just right click and hit inspect element, and this will bring up the developer tools here. And we'll just do it again. And we're brought into the image right away. So let's just go ahead and collapse. We'll just continue to collapse this until we get the individual items. So there we go. So here we have a div, which is all the items. Let me expand this for you guys. So we get the div with all the items, and then within that we have a bunch of divs, which are the individual search results. So, and we'll use this information to grab to gather this information using Puppeteer. So let's go inside one of just one of the individual search items or item results or results. And as you see, we have a div that has a div inside of it that contains a anchor tag. This anchor tag is the actual item, and then within the anchor tag we have another div which contains two more divs, and the top div looks like it contains the image and the price. Yep, the price and the image. And then the bottom div looks like it contains the title and the location and when it was posted. So let's go ahead and just collapse this, because what we're going to want is we're going to just grab each individual item here. So what we'll do is we'll use the actual console here to get the anchor tag here. So we'll use the console to make sure that we have our query selector correct. So what we'll do is we'll go document dot query selector all, and like I said, we're looking for, by using this, we're looking for a div that contains a div that contains an anchor tag. So a div within a div, or a div that contains a div that also contains an anchor tag. And let's see if there's anything unique about this anchor tag. So it does have a class. This class looks like it could be randomly generated, so we may not want to use that. All these classes are the same, so you might be able to get away with using the class as the selector, but we're going to keep it on the safe side, and we're not going to use any classes in this tutorial just because we don't know if these classes are randomly generated. So, but we do have a data attribute here of marketplace feed item. So let's see if, yep, so each anchor tag seems to have this data tag or this data attribute. So we'll use that as our unique identifier. So we'll just grab the contents of this data attribute, and we're gonna select all of the elements that are a div that contains a div that contains an anchor tag with this data attribute, which was data dash test ID, and that was equal to marketplace feed item. So that should be our selector here. And as you see, it gives us a node list of 40 items. So if we just hit enter and we look at our node list, as you see, we are getting each individual item here based on the selector above if you look in the browser. So that will be our selector, or at least our starting selector. So let me see if I can copy that. And we'll just actually steal that selector, and we'll go back into our index.js file. So this page value has a method on it called wait for selector, which is really neat. So we can go page.wait for selector, and this is an asynchronous method which allows you to wait for a specific selector, and we'll just put, it's the same thing as like a document selector or a query selector, and we'll put our selector right in there and hit that, and that's going to reload Chromium, which is going to pop up, but that's okay. So like I said, this wait for selector is asynchronous, so we can append a .then and a catch. And this catch will be an arrow function, which will just console log an error. Console. Why can't I spell console? Console.log, and this will just be, we'll just call it selector error. So that will console log an error of selector error if it can't find this specific selector. But once the selector is found and it has waited for the selector, it will run whatever inside this then method. So we're going to do an arrow function within this, and this is where we'll actually grab the data from the page. So within this, we can back off of we can back off that, and it will just return page.evaluate. And within this evaluate method, we'll do another arrow selector. So let me just explain what's going on here. So sorry, because I know I breezed through this. So we're waiting for the page to have a specific selector of this, which is the div that contains a div that contains an anchor tag that has a data attribute of marketplace feed item. And once the page finds the selector, it will go down here. If it can't find the selector, it will console log error or selector error. Now it is going to find the selector because we used the console in in Chromium to make sure that that selector exists. And once it finds that selector, what we're going to do is we're going to run a function which will return page.evaluate, which will run an arrow function. Page.evaluate allows you to, it's a method that allows you to grab the browser context or anything within the browser itself here. So page.evaluate is how we're going to actually evaluate the page and look for each individual search result. So what we'll do here is inside this arrow function of the evaluate method, we will create an array, because we're going to need an array of each of these items here. So let's create a constant variable, and we will set it to item array. And right now it will just equal an empty array. And within this page.evaluate method, we have access to the document.query selector, or the document. We have access to the document, or the DOM. So what we'll do is we can just do document. Like I said, let me see. So let's go back. Let's step back in the browser for just one moment here, and we'll open up our developer tools, and we'll go back into the document or the console here, and we'll go document.query selector all, and inside here we can paste our selector. And as you see, we're given a node list of 40 items, which is all of our results, correct? So what we'll do is, if we run document.querySelector, it's going to return this node list. So let's create a constant value of item, and we'll call it item node list. Node list. And that will be equal to document.querySelectorAll, and then our selector. So within here, let's go ahead and console.log our item node list and just see what we get. So I know you'd probably expect this to be logged in the console here, but since we're running Chromium non-headlessly, or it's not headless, and we're within the page.evaluate method, this console log is actually going to be logged within the console of Chromium. So if we go into our console, we should have a node list, and we do. We have a node list of 24 items, which contains our search results, which is awesome. And as you can see here, we have all of our information that we need. So that is working, and we are grabbing our node list of our search items. So what we can do is we can run for each method on our item node list. And that will allow us to iterate through our node list and grab further information. So we'll do for each item within this node list. And so we have item node list for each item. So basically, for each item within this node list, we're going to do something. And what we're going to do is we're going to, within this function here, or within this for each loop or for loop, we're going to grab each piece of information needed. So we're going to need the actual link to the Facebook post. We're going to need the price, the title, and I'm going to want the image. You can grab all the information needed using the same steps or methods that I'm going to show you. But in today's tutorial, I'm just going to grab the price, the link, the title, and the image. So let's go ahead and start by grabbing the title. So we'll declare a constant of item title. title, T-I-T-L-E, if I can spell, and that will be equal to our item value, and we're going to need to look at where we're actually going to grab this title from. So let's go ahead and right click on just one of our search results and inspect the element again, and we'll go ahead and close this up so it's not too confusing. And here's our anchor tag, or here's our one item, and then that anchor tag we're grabbing. So technically we're starting from here. And what's really nice is we actually have an attribute called title, and it contains the title of this post. So what we can do is we can just go item.get attribute, and we can just grab the title attribute. And then let's go ahead and save that, and we can console.log item title and just see what we return. So this is going to load up here in just a second. And once again, since we're not running headlessly and we're within this page.evaluate, it's not going to log in this console, but it will actually log in the console of the browser here. But as you can see here, we are grabbing the titles for each individual item, which is awesome. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab the actual, we can grab the price of the item here. So we'll go const item price, and we will set that equal to item, and we need to see how we're going to actually grab that. So once again, let's inspect the element here, and we'll collapse it back to our anchor tag. So this is our starting point, and we see that this anchor tag contains a div, and within that div there's two more divs, and we can see that the price is actually within the first div because it's highlighted, and there's the div of the price. So from our starting point, we need to drill down into a div that contains a div that contains another div, and that should be our price div or our price container. So what we'll do is we'll go item, and we can use the query selector here. So item.query selector, and once again, let's go back. So we're starting here. We need to select an item that is a div within a div within a div. So we'll go a div that contains a div that contains a div, and we want the inner text of this. And then let's go ahead and just console.log the item price, and just make sure that we're actually getting the right information. And once again, since we're in this page.evaluate, the console log that we're doing here is actually going to be in the browser console. So let's open up the DevTools, pop over to console, and once this loads, we should get awesome. So as you see, we get a list of all the prices. Perfect. So we have the item title and the item price. The next thing we're going to want to grab is we can grab the image, or we can actually grab, so if you open this in a new tab, there's a URL with the item, with the actual item here. So we can, let's go ahead and grab this marketplace URL because we're going to need it later. So we'll clear out this console. We'll go constant value of item URL, and we'll set it equal to item, and let's figure out how we're going to grab this item URL. So once again, let's let this open up. We'll open up our dev tools here. Let's inspect this element and go back to our starting point, which is the anchor tag here. And the anchor tag has an attribute of its reference, which is what we're trying to get, which is /marketplace/item and then the item ID. So we can just go ahead and get this attribute, but we want since we're on Facebook, the actual attribute, as you see, is facebook.com. But if we were just to grab the attribute here, actually, let me just show you. So we'll go get attribute reference and console.log item URL, and let's save and let that instance load back up and open up our dev tools and see what we get. So we just get a bunch of links, and if you're that's not an actual full URL. So we need to have the facebook.com URL at the beginning of this. And how we'll do that is we'll set the item URL equal to a template literal. And we'll do https:// and as you see, we're getting /marketplace/item. And what we'll do is, so within this template literal, we'll break into JavaScript, and then we can do item.getAttribute of the reference point. And then we can go ahead and save that. And now we should get the full URL, including this facebook.com. So once again, let's load this up, open our developer tools, go into our console, and we should just get a list. Awesome. Now we get a list of facebook.com /marketplace/item, and then each individual item. So if we were to open a few of these, you see we get full links that we can use to each individual item here, which is perfect. So now that we have the URL, the title, and the price, let's go ahead and get the image of each individual item here. So we will go constant value of item image, img, and that will be equal to item. And let's go back to our browser and see how we're going to grab that. So once again, we'll inspect the element here, and we will start at our starting point. So here's our anchor tag. So our anchor tag contains a div, which contains two divs, and as you can see, our image is somewhere within this top div, and this div contains a div with the price and an image. So we want this image. So let's see. So we need to go into the div, which contains a div, which contains an image. So item image will be equal to item dot query selector, and we will go into a div that contains a div that contains an image. And once we select this image, we don't actually want the actual image, we just want the source attribute. So we can append .getAttribute of src, and let's go ahead and just console log that item image, and let's hit save and see what we get. So within here, we can go into our console, and as you see, we just get a list of different images. Awesome. So as you see, we're getting each individual image for each search term or each search item, which is perfect. And that's all I really need, I believe. I have the title, I have the price, I have the URL of that item, and I have the image of the item. So what we'll do is within this for each loop, we're going to push all of this information into our items array. So right now our item array is empty. It's just an empty array. But down here we'll go item array, and we'll use the push method to push this information into our array. And we're going to have an array of objects, and these objects are going to contain the item title, they're going to contain the item price, they're going to contain the item URL, not the item array, the item URL, and they're going to contain the item image. So basically all of our information that we just grabbed. So after this for each loop, let's just go ahead and console.log our item array and just see what we get. So that will close. This will open up another instance. And once again, we'll open up our developer tools here, go into our console, and we should get an array. Awesome. We get an array of objects, and each object has the item title, the item price, the URL for that specific item, and then the image URL. So we're getting all the information we need, and we're putting it into an array, which is awesome. So this function, like I said, is just going to get the item array and return it. So instead of this console, instead of logging the item array, let's return our item array. Item array. And right now, it's going to be returned to nothing. So we need to set this page.waitForSelector equal to some type of constant variable. So we'll go constant of, we'll just call it item list. Item list is equal to await page. And then down here under our catch statement, which is in our main function here, we need to return our, I guess I can show you that this item list contains our array. So we can go console.log item list, item list. And now that we're outside of the browser element here, it should log the list actually in our console. So let's see. Awesome. As you see, we were able to log our array of different items with all of the information. So instead of, once again, instead of logging that information, let's return that information. And this function is done. So let's go over this function. It's going to open up Puppeteer. I'm just going to go ahead and close it. And I'm going to minimize this just so we can go over this function. I just want to go over it. I know I went kind of fast, and I just want everyone to understand what's happening here. So we're creating a constant value of Puppeteer, which we're requiring the node module of Puppeteer. It's pretty simple. We're declaring a function, an asynchronous function, which takes in a parameter of search term. And then within this function, we're declaring a browser, and we're waiting for Puppeteer to launch the browser. Once Puppeteer, the browser, launches, we're creating a page, which is equal to a new tab within that browser. Once the page is created, we're telling Puppeteer to navigate to the Facebook Marketplace and search for whatever argument we pass through via this search term. And then we are setting a constant item list, which is equal to the page element, and we're waiting for a specific selector. And this selector is our anchor tag, which has a specific data attribute. If this selector is found within the page, then we evaluate the page. We create a empty item array. We search the page via document.querySelectorAll for our selector, which returns a node list, which is then stored in this item node list variable. Once we have this item node list variable, we're able to loop through each individual item within the node list via item node list.forEach, or the forEach method of this item or of this node list. And for each item, we then grab the title via the attribute of title, which is tied onto the anchor tag. Then we're able to grab the price via query selector of each individual item, which is contained within a div, within a div, within a div, and we're grabbing the inner text of this selector. We're then able to grab the URL of the item by grabbing the attribute of the reference point of this anchor tag here. And then once again, we're able to grab the image of the item via query selector, which is a div that is within our A tag, which contains a div, and that div contains an image. Once we select that item, we're able to get the source attribute of this item. And then once we have all that information, we are pushing that information into our item array, which is declared empty up here. And we are declaring an object with all that information inside of that. And all of this is happening for every single item within this node list. Once we run through the node list, we then return our items array, which is now populated with information based off of this for each loop. And if we cannot find this selector, so if the selector is not found, we then catch that error and console log selector error, so that way we know where we failed. If all goes well, we then return the item list information, which is based off of this return statement here of our item array. So this get item function will basically just be an array. So what we can do is we can go const items is equal to get items and whatever item you want. So we're going to be, once again, we're looking for iPhones, iPhone 8 to be specific. And then we can just console.log our item, this item value here. And let's see what happens here. So let's go ahead and open our terminal. And let's see. Item is not defined. Item is defined. Oh, it's items. Okay. And let's see what happens. Oh, so we're logging a promise because this information is not gathered yet because the page is still loading. So what we need to do is we need to create another function, which will be an asynchronous function. We'll just call it initiate scraper is equal to an asynchronous function, an asynchronous arrow function. And then we can just basically take this in here. We can take these two lines and put it inside this function, and we will await for this function to run, basically. And then we can actually run the scraper method. So let's see what happens. So the page loads. Once again, we're waiting for this item value to exist. And as you see, we get our array again. So we don't need this browser to actually be here. So we can go back up to our launch statement here and just remove this object. That was just for development purposes. So if we save that and we go down here, we see the browser never launches, but we should still get an array. This log statement should still run. So let's just wait for it. And as you see, everything just happened in the background, and we have all of our information that we need. We can open individual link based off that array, and that opened on my other screen here. So let me just pop it out over here. And there we go. So yeah, that was that ad I thought it was. that says "We buy iPhones," but so that is awesome. So everything is working. Once again, we could change this to BMX bikes. And then instead of a list of iPhones that runs, we should get a list of all the BMX bikes that are currently on the Facebook Marketplace within my area. So, there we go. 2 BMX bikes, $500. If we open that link up, it's probably going to open my other page over here. So once again, we have everything we need. You can change it to anything. This can be coffee makers, iPhones, laptops, bikes, motorcycles, cars, anything. So that is how you scrape a web page using Puppeteer. In the next video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get this data and store it in a database, and check if this information is already in the database. But for this tutorial, I just wanted to show you how to scrape a website with Puppeteer, and we use the Facebook Marketplace. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave a comment below. I will try to respond to the best of my abilities. If you're having any problems with Puppeteer, I'll leave a link to their GitHub page, which has a list of issues or problems which have most likely been solved. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment, and I'll try to solve any problems you guys have. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to leave a like, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later, guys.